Is there a way? It's really loud, yeah, and it's like a squealy. Is it squealy? See if I can turn it down. We'll get there, guys. Better, much better. Okay. Like screaming at them. You guys, it's time. Let's get started. Let's get pumped up. All right, guys. So Tammy and Emily's, I'm going to try and remember, but there's a lot. Thank you. Good. I appreciate that. And I probably have my back to the camera. So anyway, today we're talking about make and receive offers. It's going to be awesome because you guys have already gone through like all these steps to get to here. You've got where you're actually working with clients. And this is the point where the fun really begins. And like I actually had clients recently, first time buyers that are so cute. They were like, we went and saw some houses and then right before we wrote the offer, they're like, now what happens? And I'm like, now I do a CMA to make sure their house is priced right. And this, they're like, now the work really begins. And I'm like, you got it. This is where the work really begins for the realtor. Getting to the point where you're ready to make and receive offers. So this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about how to communicate with your buyers, how to communicate with your sellers and other agents. So it's super, super important in this industry. Dean says we have a small sandbox that we play in. So we get to work with the same agents over and over again, whether we want to or not. So it's super important how you communicate with them. You want to have, my niece just got her license up in Layton. And she's like, I'm like, you want to be the agent that agents want to work with. You want to have a reputation of like just being awesome to work with because it makes a big difference. I've had it happen on multiple offer situations several times where the agent told me, yours wasn't even the highest offer, but we wanted to work with you. And I was like, yes, bring it. Let's do that, guys. So it makes a big difference. So just to tell you a little bit about me, because we just met, I've been a realtor since 1996. So 29 years this July. So basically my whole adult life, my whole like raising kids, everything. Now my kids are older. I was just telling her I have a new grandbaby that just last Monday. So now I'm like into the next phase of things, but I absolutely love it because every day is different. Every client is different. That's like putting the puzzle pieces together for everybody. And it's different for everyone. So anyway, that's just a little bit about me. I've done a whole bunch of things in real estate and a whole bunch of things with the board. I've served on the board. Anyway, you don't need Burke. Yeah. Yep. And so, yeah, so that's just a little bit so you know that who I am a little bit. So that's what we're going to talk about today. You guys have been over this before, our belief system. It's kind of confusing. The Y4C2Ts. This is what we believe in at KW: win-win or no deal, integrity, do the right thing, customers always come first, commitment in all things, communication, seek first to understand, creativity, ideas before results, teamwork, together everyone achieves more, trust starts with honesty, and equity, opportunities for all, success is results through people. So we want to just reinforce that. That's something that is really important as we do our day-to-day business, and that's just what we believe in here. So, all right, so today we're talking about the process of making an offer or receiving an offer, whether you're working with the buyer or whether you're working with the seller. So we're going to talk about preparing the offer, actually writing the offer, presenting the offer, receiving it if you're the listing agent, and responding to it. Then we'll just kind of recap and go through some things. So since it's a small group, feel free to ask as many, I'm pretty casual anyway, ask as many questions. I'll tell you some good stories, some fun stories, and we'll go through all this. So, all right. So here we go. Some of the best agents I know love nothing more than a difficult negotiation that gives them a chance to really shine, to acknowledge objections, to discover a solution with which both sides can be happy. That's what I'm talking about, like the puzzle. Like, how do we make the puzzle fit? This is like, how do we really show our agents, our clients, our value? This is one of the ways. So that's what Gary Keller said. And did I go backwards? No, here we go. All right, so the offer process. You guys are both brand new, right? Okay. Okay. And what were you doing before real estate? Just curious. Marketing. Okay, good. That's good. Tie in. Hey, no judgment. No judge. Hey, it's all good. That's awesome. Okay, so you both are working with something related. I mean, people, marketing, like some, so you have some like background. Yeah. A lot. Yeah, I teased some of my clients. Some of my clients are so funny. I'm like, we go into a house and they're arguing in the kitchen and they're like, I'm so sorry, we were arguing in front of you. And that's what I was like. I started go to school for counseling, and then I decided I would make minimum wage when I graduated. And I was like, no, I think I'm gonna go into real estate. So, hi, how's it going? So I was like, so I kind of have a little bit of a background in it, but after 29 years in real estate, I definitely have a background in it. And but I also tell them, like, I don't want you to be afraid to talk about things in front of me, because then I know what your concerns are and it helps me serve you better. Like, I can't, like, people sometimes go in a house and they're like, oh, we didn't like it, I'm sorry. And I'm like, why are you sorry to me? They're like tiptoeing around, like, and I'm like, what? Don't be sorry to me. It's not my house. I want to know what you like and don't like. That's how I help you best. So sometimes people get funny about that. So here's the process. Buyer finds a house they love. They make an offer. Seller can respond in one of three ways. They can counter, accept, or reject, or ignore. There's a fourth way. And unfortunately, that happens sometimes too. So if they decide to counter it, that like opens the negotiation. With our offers here in Utah, the way we write them, sometimes there's a misconception that, let's say I wrote an offer today and I said the acceptance deadline is tomorrow at 6 p.m. That does not mean that they have to respond by 6 p.m. tomorrow. In good practice, hopefully they will, but they don't have to. If they're going to counter it, they don't have to do it by 6 p.m. tomorrow. They can counter it later. It's not a response deadline. So especially with first-time buyers, I try and warn them up front, like, even though we're giving them till 6 p.m. tomorrow to respond or to accept, it's not a response deadline. They may respond sooner, they may respond later, they may not respond at all. So just because usually I get the call at like, 3:30 in the afternoon when our deadline is, have you heard anything yet? Like, I promise I'll let you know the minute I hear something. So, but it's not a response deadline. And that's just one of the things in Utah, the way our contract is written. If they're going to counter it, it doesn't matter if it's after 6. The counter revives, technically it dies at 6 o'clock, the offer, but the counter revives it and keeps it alive if both parties are still willing to negotiate. If then it's back in the buyer's court to say, nah, I'm not interested, or I'm moving on to the next property or whatever. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Correct. Correct. Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes like what will happen is like, hey, the seller's traveling today and they can't get it signed by 6 p.m. They technically would just write a counteroffer that says acceptance deadline is extended to, let's say, 10 p.m. or whatever. Then the buyer then has to agree to that. So it's back in the buyer's court. So the buyer could say, no, never mind, we've already found another house, whatever. So yeah, exactly right. Okay, then the seller could just flat out accept the offer as it is, no changes. Anything that changes though has to be a counteroffer. Even like I just had one recently. They accidentally put the earnest money was supposed to be $11,200, which is such a random amount, but they put 11 period 200 instead of 11 comma 200. So we had to counter that to clarify and correct. So technically it's a counteroffer, even though we're just changing one tiny little grammatical error, but it could be a big deal in the end, $11.20 or $11,200. So yeah, if you accept it as is, no changes, and then you start going to closing, like that process. If they reject it, it just flat out, nope, we don't want this offer. I usually recommend to my sellers, it's never best practice to just reject an offer. If there's something you can work with at all, let's counter. Even the buyer may say no, but like, hey, they came in super, super low. We just don't want to work with these people. or they offended us somehow. We don't want to work with these people. That's fine. That's on you. But if there's something we can work with, let's say they came in super low and we counter back at full price, at least we give them the option to accept that, or we come in just a little under full price. We will at least counter it. That's my general advice to sellers, because it gets you farther down that road to your goal. What your goal is to get on with your life. So sometimes in that case, if your seller rejects the offer or just says, nah, I don't want to work with this one, the buyer's agent will be like, well, why? What could we have done differently? And sometimes it's just, there's no way it's going to work. But sometimes it's like, hey, what could we have done better? And even in a multiple offer situation, I always like to learn, if I didn't win the bid or whatever, what did the other agent do that I didn't? What could we have done better? And if they'll tell you, that's great. It's just learning for the next one. So sometimes that will help you get down that road. So, okay, guys, so during this process here, what kind of emotions are going through your buyers and your sellers? Like, what's going on in their brain? Adrenaline, lots of emotion. Usually, we always have those engineers that don't have any emotion, but oh, really? He's an anomaly. Yeah. Most engineers that I've worked with are all about the numbers, all about the, right now I'm working with, some weird reason I'm working with a lot of pilots, and my father-in-law was a pilot. So I'm like, I get it. You have to be on time. Everything has to fit in the order, or they can't stand it. They don't know what to do. So it's like, you got to flip this button before you flip that button. Pilots are very, very detail oriented. So, right, me too. I want my pilot to be very detail oriented. Absolutely. So don't assume that that's always a no. There's lots of things going on. Your buyer's hopeful, excited. Your sellers are hopeful and excited that this might work. There's a lot going on. But we as agents, we don't get to be emotional. We have to calm everything, keep everybody calm, remain professional, remain put together. Yeah, we're excited. My niece, I was just telling you, just got her license, and she was calling me the other day. I think I'm gonna write my first offer. She's all excited and she's all hyped up, and she's hyped up anyway. She's just that personality. But I'm like, hey, calm down, calm down. Like you've got to be the calm one for this transaction. She called the other agent. They'd just gotten an offer the night before. This house had sat on the market 4 months, no offers. The night before they got, so it's like that roller coaster of, even for her, like, oh, we're gonna make an offer. This is so exciting. And then, they decided they don't want to be in a multiple offer situation. So it's like, even for us as agents, yes, we go through the emotions, but for our clients, we have to just be the calm in the storm, because they are super amped up. There's a lot going on for them. Like, it's a big deal to not know where you're going to live. Like, you're like in between, and you're like maybe coming from another state and you don't know where you're going to live. That's a big deal. So we want to empathize with them. We want to be, on their side for sure, but we don't want to let our emotions get in the way. There's lots of worry, there's anxiety, there's impatience as they wait for the other person to respond to their counteroffer or their offer. So many things going on. So we have to be the one that keeps it all calm. All right. So what about multiple offers? How do you think that would be different for this process? Or what could we as agents do to make it better? Super organized. I love it. Be very detail oriented. I once had a multiple offer situation on one of my listings. Got 27 offers in a day and a half. It was insane. One of the offers, it was actually from an agent in this office, but I won't say who, I'll never say, they didn't mean to, and I know they didn't mean to, but on the first page where it says, this much for down payment, this much for earnest money, this much for that, they accidentally put the down payment amount on the seller finance line. So it looked like they were asking us to do seller financing. I know they didn't mean to. I know that's not what they intended, but when I present it to the seller and they see that, they're going, does this agent even know what they're doing? So very detail oriented, very organized. You want to make sure that you present the offer And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, in a way that makes sense to the other agent and that shows the other agent that you do know what you're doing, even if it's your first deal. Everyone had their first deal. We all been there. And don't be afraid to tell the other agent, like, hey, this is my first deal. I love it when people tell me that, because I'm like, I will guide you through this. I've been doing this a long time, probably longer than most of you have been alive, so I will guide you through it. Like, I'd rather you tell me that than fumble through and we both are kind of going, what is going on? Like, rather that be the case. So, all right. Yeah. This is probably the best. I try to be as impartial as possible. And in a situation like that where we had 27 offers, for fair housing, I don't even give the names of the buyers. I put it in a spreadsheet and just like, here's the price, here's the earnest money, here's the this, here's the that, and just break it all down so it's apples to apples across the board. And then I will, in my spreadsheet, I have like a system where I go green for a positive and red for a negative in the offer. Like, hey, compared to these other offers, offering more, obviously that's green. Like, the earnest money on this one is $500 and the earnest money here, that's obviously a red. Like, it's a red flag. We want to be aware and kind of compare. And then I put some as like neutral, like these are similar. But I don't do that to every single offer, only the ones that are most pertinent. When we had 27, like seriously, we started showing this house on a Friday morning at 10 a.m. Sellers left town. We had to shut down showings by Sunday. We were like, no more. It was a revolving door. It was the craziest. And we would have, in fact, so I put on the MLS like, hey, all offers are due by Monday at 10 a.m. Tuesday morning, I got an offer from an agent that just didn't even pay any attention. And it was full price, which was nowhere near what it was going to get. And she was like, oh, what? And it's just like, first of all, read the MLS. Yeah, first of all, just read the instructions. Second of all, like, you could have called me, or, they showed it either Friday or Saturday, and it was now Tuesday. Days had gone by, like a lot had happened in that time. So just be proactive for your client and ask the questions. So one thing I love to ask sellers agents, and that has gotten me some good information, is before we're writing the offer, because I want to know what's going to be the best offer that the seller's likely to accept. Do they need a longer closing because they can't get out right away, or, their job relocation or something like that? Do they need a shorter closing because, like, so the clients, I have clients closing this Friday, first time buyers, cutest thing. The sellers were already moved out of this little townhouse and they were living with 4 kids and 4 dogs in an RV. I'm like, they want a quick closing. So we wrote the offer March 31st, we're closing Friday. Like, that was really beneficial to them to have a quick closing. My clients were in a position where they could do it. But see, most of them, you'd be waiting, waiting at least 30 days to close. Yeah, like, the one thing I like to ask is, you've read the MLS, you've read everything on there. I like to ask the other agent, what else can you tell me about this listing that's not on the MLS that I need to know? And just stop and pause right there and don't say a word. Let them talk, let them think for a second. Because I've had agents in that position where I've asked that question, give me information they never should have given me. One flat out told me, well, I think it's overpriced. I was like, we didn't, but now we're going to make you a lower offer. So if the agent on the listing side thinks it's overpriced and flat out said that to me, we're not going to make a full price offer. No way. So that information, sometimes they'll give you things that they really shouldn't have. But yeah, finding out what's important to the seller, especially, I think somebody said the other day, 30% of houses right now are getting multiple offers in this market, which is kind of wild. So yeah, we want to know what's important to the seller. I had the same thing. I have a listing. It was really hot. We were having tons and tons of activity on it. 3 different people said they wanted to make an offer, but they had to get some things together, had to figure some things out. One said they weren't even looking for a house. They stumbled into the open house and fell in love, and now they want to buy it, but they, hadn't been looking. And so they hadn't gotten their pre-approval. So 3 different people said they wanted to buy it. And then another agent came in and showed it. And she asked me, what's been going on? I said, we have a lot of interest. It's been very busy. And a lot of people want this house, but they're just not there yet. They wrote us an offer. They were the only offer. Their offer net us $6,000 over asking. The only offer. on the table. I was like, okay, we'll take it and run. So you just asking those questions, but there were some anomalies with their offer, which why they offered a little bit more as a VA loan, and VA loans sometimes take longer. And, so there were a couple things why they were like, we're going to compensate for what we think are maybe possibly negatives with our offer with more money. So in case another offer comes in, because it could have very well. So yeah, time frame, motivation. I like to ask, everyone wants to know, why are they moving? Why are they moving? Why are they moving? I tell my clients, I don't ask that on every single house that we're going to see. Once we find the house, then I'll dig deeper into it. But yeah, this one, for example, like mom, dad, 4 kids, 4 dogs living in an RV because they want to move to Colorado. They've had this dream to move to Colorado for years, but they can't do it until they sell this place. Like, okay, that gives me a lot of good information. So how we can negotiate with that. Even asking the agent, like, how do you want to receive the offer? Almost everybody now is email. Try to send it in one PDF if possible, rather than like, I had one time, agent sent me an offer. It was like 16 pages long. Each page was an individual PDF. And I was like, I'm going to die. Like, if I have to open 16 different PDFs to read this whole offer, yeah, try to make it as easy as possible on them. So try not, oh, go ahead. You're good. No, that's what we're here for.
What else about this? What else can you tell me about this listing that's not certain things, like, even though, why are they moving? Do you use your sellers or buyers to be like, and these questions will come out, do I have your permission?
Yeah, you want to be really careful with when it's your seller. Good point. Yeah, sometimes seller's agent will tell me too much, but when it's your seller, you want to be really careful and make sure, yeah, you have their permission to talk about what their situation is, or yeah, or that you're going to come up with a way to just be vague. They just had a change in plans. Life changed. They wanted to, because sometimes the word divorce, people say, oh, they're selling because of divorce. They must be desperate. Not always the case, but I have a listing right now. They took it off the market 2 years ago because their son was getting divorced and needed to move in with them. They were going to move out of state, and they're like, oh, no, we're going to stay longer now. They weren't really super motivated at the time. Now they're motivated. So we're back on the market. So just, sometimes it's hard to tell. And sometimes it's hard to tell until you actually get an offer from your seller how motivated they are. Like sometimes you'll get there and you're like, oh, they didn't tell me everything. Like I've had lower offers than I expected that sellers were like, yep, we'll accept it. And I was like, what? I didn't think they were that motivated. And then come to find out there's this other reason behind that they hadn't told me. So sometimes there's that. So I try to be as diplomatic as possible when it's my seller, but sometimes there's just no way to get around it. Like I work with a corporate relocation company a lot. It says on the MLS, it's corporate relocation. They know they're moving for a job and they have to be there, at a certain time. So there's no way to get around that. But also they've usually price them very appropriately to get them sold. So it all depends on the situation. So yeah, just being careful. Sometimes it's clear when you walk through the house that it's a divorce. You can see just in the house, like, oh, all the men's clothes are gone, but this whole part of the closet is empty. But it looked like there was stuff there not long ago, like that kind of thing. So use your investigative tools as you walk through houses. You get a lot of information through that. So good question. Awesome. All right, so let's move on to ahas. Let's see how we're doing on time. Question. I mean, we're doing pretty good asking questions, so that's awesome. Okay, so we'll just move on to getting ready to prepare the offer. And here's where we're getting ready to write an offer. Yes, ensure that it's still available. Build rapport with the listing agent as much as you can. So much of what communication is done by texting nowadays, but still you can build some rapport and let them know, who you are. That's not bad. Inquire about activity. How big, like this other agent did on my listing. Like if she hadn't done that, they may have come in with a lower offer because she didn't know that lots of people were interested in this house. Other offers on the property status. So the one my niece was going to make an offer on, they had been on the market, like I said, about 120 days, no offers. So she called and said, have you had any other offers? Period. Like the whole time of your listing. And that's when they found out that they just had one the night before. Why did they fall through? Another one that I had recent listing, for some reason, it was just in this price point where everybody wanted it, but they all had a house to sell and hadn't even listed it yet. So I've got all these people that want it, but they can't buy it, you know? But telling the other agent, telling the buyer's agent that like, hey, their house is now on the market, and if it sells tomorrow, they're coming back. You know, they want this house. So letting them know that, asking those questions about seller motivations and things that they need, asking the listing agent how they want to receive the offer. Definitely want to send the pre-approval letter from the lender when you present an offer. That definitely just makes it stronger. Review, obviously read the MLS, please, please, please. And tax records sometimes can be valuable information. Then you're going to create a CMA for your client. Like, hey, is this house really worth what they think it is? So these clients that are closing this week, we were looking at a wide area of homes, bless you. So we were looking from like Springville to Santaquin, which is a lot of different territory and a lot of different price ranges. So in their perspective, they liked Santaquin. The houses all down there are a little less because they're further away. But in their perspective, the house they really liked was priced amazing. So when I went to do the CMA on it, I was like, it's priced pretty good, but it's not priced amazing because the other homes, it's a townhome. The other ones in here have sold for 10 grand less than what they're asking. So we can negotiate on this, guys. And they were like, really? So we actually got it for 10 grand under what they were asking and got the seller to pay closing costs and got the sellers to do some other things to the house. So that if I hadn't looked at that and they were like, yeah, we feel good about this price and we made an offer at full price, I wouldn't have been doing my job for my client. Like, do that research. And then usually after you go under contract is when you're going to get the self disclosures and documents. So questions on this? One thing I usually tell my buyers, like when we sit down to write an offer, I tell them there's 3 things that are the most important that are going to make your offer stand out from the others. I could have 10 offers on the table. They could all have the exact same price. That doesn't mean they're all strong offers. You know, there are other parts to the equation. So price is the number 1. That's the first thing that sellers look for. But then earnest money. How much earnest money are you putting down? How serious are you about this house? Probably 15 years ago, I had a listing that was 650,000, which now I think it just resold recently for 1.5 million. So in the day, it was a big house and it was a lot of house. And my sellers were from Maine and they were not familiar with the Utah market. But back then it was very common for $1,000 earnest money on the house, regardless of the price of the house. And my clients back east, they don't do that. They don't mess around. Most people put 2%, 3% earnest money down. That's earnest money. And so they were like, we don't even want to look at any offers unless it has 10 grand minimum earnest money. And that was a big ask back then. Like people were not used to that. But we put it on the market. I put that in the agent remarks. Like we actually got 3 offers, which was weird back then. Like that doesn't happen. One of them had $1,000 earnest money. One had $10,000 earnest money. And the third was just a joke. Like it wasn't even worth looking at. But they instantly, the one that had $1,000 earnest money, they didn't want to look at it. They're like, they can't follow our instructions. We don't want to work with them. Like, okay. So that's really important to know. Like if there is something like that, like that was just a weird quirk at the time for my clients that not everybody would ask for. But my clients, that was important to them. And then the third thing is timing. So those are the things the seller is going to look for: price, earnest money, and timing. Yeah.
Additional cash
No, well, so they do have to come up with it up front, but it's part, I always tell them, this is your money. It's part of your down payment and closing costs. It's applied to you at closing. And it's fully refundable up through the due diligence and up through the financing and appraisal deadline. So yeah. Credits them. Yeah, at closing, the title company will credit them for that amount. So they don't have to. So yeah, like if their down payment is going to be 50,000 and they put 10,000 as earnest money, they only have to bring 40 to closing. Yeah. Usually right now it's about 1% of the purchase price is pretty typical. We've gotten better in Utah where we're coming to a better number where it feels more comfortable, especially if you're talking about $1 million house. And yeah, house prices have gone up so much. Yeah, it's like they're going to buy $1 million house. They should have $10,000 in the bank, right? I would hope, So yeah, that's just a level of seriousness. And honestly, I've had offers identical in every way, but one put 20,000 earnest money, the other put 5,000. The seller just was like, hey, this one's much stronger because they're more serious about it. They're willing to put more upfront, even though it's fully refundable, So it just shows the level of seriousness. So those are the 3 things I tell my buyers. Like, depending on what you can do, not every buyer can put 2% or 3% earnest money down, but if you can, and we're competing with other people, you should. Again, it's fully refundable. We're definitely working with you on that, and I'm going to make sure that we hit your deadlines. There's a lot of debate and a lot of talk about like love letters for houses. So I go both ways on it because I have won multiple offer situations because of love letters. And I tell my sellers most of the time, if we have love letters, I won't show them to you till after closing. If you want to see them after closing, that's great. But too often people put in things in these letters that are fair housing issues, and we are not going there. I am not getting into a federal fair housing, issue. So I don't show them to them. Too often there's a picture of their cute little family, or I'm a single mom, or those are fair housing things. We can't go there. So I'll tell you, like if they said, we love your kitchen, or, whatever, but I'm not going to show you those letters till after closing. But I've also had 2 of my buyers, one pretty recently, probably 3 years ago, maybe 4. I asked the seller, called, I knew there were going to be multiple offers. This house was amazing, total remodel up in Salt Lake on the east side by Liberty Park, great area. And literally when we went to show it, there's a line out the door of agents waiting to show this house. I knew it was going to be hot. It was crazy. And so my client, I called the listing agent and said, what would your people want to see in an offer? So he told me, he said, honestly, this might sound weird, but they want to know who the buyer is. They want to see a letter from the buyer explaining who they are. And I'm like, okay, told my client, he's a single guy. I'm like, we have to be really careful how we write this. But the people had done this full remodel. It was gorgeous, and they put their heart into this remodel. They wanted to know that who was buying their house appreciated it. That was basically what it was. But my client wrote this letter, and I always tell them, I take edit rights. Whatever you write, I'm going to have rights to edit because you can't say certain things. But he was like, this house, it was so cute. They had chickens, they had grapevines, they had all this stuff. And he was like, I just remember as a kid, we used to walk down the street and get the eggs and sell the eggs. And like, he just wrote a great letter, but he didn't talk anything about fair housing issues. He just talked a lot about the house and loved about it, but he didn't, and how much he appreciated the work they put into it. And that, honestly, the agent said they had another offer that was higher than ours to begin with, but also had an escalation clause, unlimited. Like they would go as high as anyone else, or higher, and they took our offer. So it was like, okay, we'll do that. So you just have to be careful. I do like to steer people away from actually writing a letter because, like I said, sometimes I had one client write one that was like 3 pages long. I was like, that's too much information. They're not going to read it. But that one actually too turned out the name. So we're moving here from Idaho down to Provo. Their last name was fairly uncommon, and they did write this letter, and I did edit it quite a bit. And I told them that, like, I've taken out this whole section. But come to find out, the people in Provo, they're like, wait, are you guys related to da 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 da? And they're like, yeah. They got the house because of that. They were related to somebody that they knew, and they loved that family. But it was a last name that stuck out. Like, I was like, okay, you just never know what might be the thing that seals the deal. The other one that I thought had that was pretty fun was multiple offers. We were not the highest offer, but my clients were moving here from Massachusetts, and we walked down into the basement. I think I told this last time. We walked down into the basement, and it was like a literal shrine to the Red Sox. Like, we're like, great. I'm from Connecticut too, so I like the Red Sox. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And my client wrote the letter and said, I felt so at home in your basement because I'm moving here from Massachusetts. So that won the deal. That won the deal. Lower offer, lower price. Who knew, right? So you just never know. But you got to be careful. So, okay, so let's see. Whoops, we're gonna keep going because we're gonna run out of time because I keep talking. Okay, so here's where we're writing the offer. The price and terms, like I said, seller disclosures, you generally don't get those till after you're under contract, but sometimes agents will put them on the MLS. It can be really helpful if there's something they already know is going to be an issue. I had one house I remember very vividly showing that was termites, and they knew the seller knew there were termite issues. They put it on the MLS so we could see it. I'm like, thank you. Like, we don't have to find that out on our own. You know it, we know it before we even go see the house. So that can be helpful. What stays with the house? That's conveyances. So is the refrigerator going to stay? Is the washer and dryer going to stay? What's staying with the house? Those are really important to review with your buyer. What do you want to ask for? And important to review with your seller. I know it can be complicated when we're going through all these things, but you want to make sure your seller had more fights over the stupidest things that sellers were like, well, we didn't think that was going to stay with the house. One was a shelf. It was decorative shelf that her grandpa had made for her. She's like, I am not getting, it's not worth anything to anybody else, but my grandpa made it, sentimental value. I'm not giving them that for anything. So I will kill the deal over this house, over this shelf, because my grandpa made it. And the buyers were like digging their heels in. I want that shelf. Like, are you kidding me? Like, it really has zero value, but we're going to fight over it. So many things like that get fought over that could just be easily headed off. Like, that shouldn't have even been an issue. Like, the buyer's agent really should have seen that's decor. That's not part of the house, but it's attached, you know. That's exactly certain things. Like, I do tell my sellers, like, hey, if you're not gonna, like, I had one seller one time, they had this Italian chandelier that was like fancy. I'm like, take it out. Do not, you're gonna go get the replacement light fixture now. Exactly. You want it bad, the buyer wants it bad, and we're gonna fight over it. So go get that. If you're gonna replace it anyway, just do it now. Like, we don't want to show the house with it in it because they're gonna want it. That's just the way it goes. So, and then we talked about earnest money, due diligence. Okay, so this is a good one too. I had some offers come over recently, multiple offer situation on one of my listings. The due diligence was 30 days. I'm like, no. You are not getting 30 days to do your due diligence on a house that is 4 years old and in immaculate condition. 10 to 14 is pretty much the standard right now. From the time the offer is accepted, 10 to 14. If you can shorten those, if you're in a multiple offer situation and you have a buyer that you're representing, shortening those makes it more attractive to the seller, because they know you're going to get that done. You're going to know that you're moving forward or you're not. But this is where I also tell my buyers, like, hey, it doesn't matter what comes up. If you don't like it, you don't have to buy the house. If you're within your due diligence timeline that we put in the contract, up till 5 o'clock that day, you wake up one morning and you don't like the color of the sky that day, no big deal. We get your earnest money back. We back out, we get your earnest money back. So there's not really a risk for the buyer in that regard. The buyer due diligence checklist that we go through on the MLS goes through a lot of different things. But here's what I always recommend. If you're working with a buyer, like, go over that buyer due diligence checklist. That's a lot of words. Like, it talks about all the things, and this is what I tell my clients when we're signing the buyer broker agreement. I'm like, okay, so it says in the buyer broker agreement, I'm a realtor. I'm not a tax advisor. I'm not a lawyer. Don't take my tax or legal advice. I know enough to be dangerous, but that's all it is, right? Just enough. So then we go through the buyer due diligence checklist. It's 3 pages long. And I'm like, remember how I just told you I'm trained as a realtor, not a tax advisor or a lawyer or a home inspector? These are all things, 3 pages of things to not trust Amber on. These are things you need to find out for yourself. I can help you find the right people, but I'm not the person. I'm not the source for this information. Things like zoning. Like, if it's really important to them that it's zoned commercial or whatever, you need to call the city and you need to ask them. Like, I don't make that call anymore. I used to do it and I've been burned because the city told me one thing and then they told the buyer a different thing. So I'm like, okay, here's who you need to check with. You need to make that call. So that you know for yourself that it is what they say it is. So yeah, very, very important there. Time for acceptance. Sometimes in these multiple offer situations, have agents that are like, well, we're going to give you an offer at noon today and we want an answer by 5 o'clock this afternoon. Like, sometimes putting that much pressure on a seller makes the seller just go, no, thank you. Like, I don't want to be pressured. I don't want to be in a situation where I feel uncomfortable. I want to have the time to think it through. Pretty typical right now is about 24 hours. If I send you an offer at 3 o'clock today, I hope we'll have an answer by 3 o'clock tomorrow, or end of day, 5 o'clock tomorrow. So that's important. You just don't want to push people too hard. Yeah. Yeah, please.
Says standard response time is 5 p.m. every time.
Yes, unless otherwise changed.
They write the offer for new construction. The couple I've done haven't said anything about a specific
Time.
Have you experienced that? Is there something?
Yeah, builders are on their own timeline, but it's automatically assumed in any real estate contract in Utah, 5 o'clock Mountain Time, unless otherwise specified. So yeah, I think
That's just kind of
just contract law. Yeah.
It's not written, so if the builder
Yeah.
accepts at 5:05.
And technically, like, they're the builder and they have their own contract.
Yeah.
They can probably do whatever they want because builders are that way. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. But good question. Awesome. I love it.
Sorry.
You're good. You're great. No, I love it. Ask questions. That's what we're here for. I just want to make sure we don't go crazy overtime. So, all right. Financing terms. So we talked a little bit ago about this offer that we got that was a VA offer on my listing. Sometimes the terms, like, they're literally putting 0 down on $1 million house. And sometimes that's scary. Like, I had to call the lender and be like, why? Why are they putting, because they have this VA benefit, because they just sold a house in Florida that they lost money on. They're very well qualified. And she explained to me, like, okay, they're very well qualified. They have 800 plus credit scores. Honestly, this doesn't put them, they're like below 30% debt to income ratio, but it just works better for them if they can do. And she says, it's not make or break. And I was like, oh, good. Now I know that I can tell my seller. Like, this is a little unusual for someone to put 0 down on $1 million house, but it's a VA loan and VA allows them to do that and it works better for them. So that's what they want to do. So that's why they're offering you more money. So financing terms can be a big deal, like, as you're comparing offers. Yeah, one may have, we had one like, hey, they have $200,000 down. This one only has 20,000. Like, which one's the stronger buyer? All those things play into what the offer looks like. Buyer pre-approval, we talked about that. When can they close? And possession, oh, that's another big one. I was once here meeting with a client when we were in the old office before, and there was another agent closing a deal in the conference room right next to us. And all of a sudden it got really heated and really loud and awkward because the seller, no, they were the buyer. The buyer had literally a moving van packed up, ready to move into this house that they were just signing on right now. And they had written into the contract that there were 3 days after closing, but the buyer forgot. And the buyer's agent, they were really upset at their agent because they forgot. And really the agent should have reminded them, like, remember, when we get to closing, you're not going to get keys for 3 days because we did this up front. They were extremely upset. And that deal could have been smooth as silk up to that point, but that just ruined it for that people. Yeah.
Speaking of that, we all hope that doesn't possession on recording.
Right.
Oh, both buyer and seller will sign that morning, so record that after.
Yeah.
You just generally say, hey, plan on it recording the next business day.
It depends.
Sign Friday at
Yeah.
5 p.m. It's not going to record until Monday.
Right.
You just tell your clients, hey,
We might want to sign on Wednesday. Yeah. Usually.
I get lucky.
Totally.
But plan on tomorrow at some point.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how you?
Yeah, I usually plan like at least a business day in between. Like if you want possession that weekend, yeah, we're gonna close on Wednesday to be sure that you get possession on Friday because crazy things happen. I just told this to my clients that we're closing on Friday, but we are gonna fund and record. I know their lender and I know it will happen. And the seller's signing Thursday, so we'll be good. So sometimes you can't control when the seller signs. Like if the seller doesn't go in to sign, you can't fund and record. But yeah, so we're all set up, but I told him, hey, crazy things happen. Two of the craziest things that I've seen happen, we had one that was my buyer closing on a listing that was out of state. They were coming from out of state. The money, they wired their down payment money, which was like $100,000, a lot of money. It was First American Title. And for some reason, First American Title gave the wrong wiring instructions to my buyer, 1 digit off. It went to First American Title in California instead of First American Title in Utah, and they would not record. They were like, we don't have the money here. It's at your company, but it's in a different location. They would not record. And my clients had to wait till Monday. That was a crazy one. 1 digit off on the wiring instructions. The other crazy one that not me, but a friend of mine had a listing. It's like an 85-year-old lady that somehow had the exact same name. She was an 85-year-old like Chinese lady, had the exact same name as somebody on the terror watch list that was like a 20-year-old man. Like not even close to the same, but the name was the same. So title held up the funding and recording for almost a week while that was being cleared up because he was on that name was on the terror watch list or whatever they call it. I can't remember, but that was one that you would never see coming. Like, and I told my clients that story. I'm like, crazy things happen sometimes. It could happen Friday, but it could be another, couple business days. So yeah, try and warn them up front. Yeah.
Especially if you're doing a sale. That funding and reporting, those checkboxes are really important.
Very.
They're non-monetary.
Yeah,
well,
but super important. They could be. Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, no, and even like I had one yesterday, like we knew the seller was signing ahead of time, but I asked the buyer, I'm like, okay, are you guys planning? I always try and ask, are you planning to fund and record same day with your loan? Because I want to know, I want to make sure keys are there when they want keys. So they said, the agent just responded, oh, we're signing at 2 o'clock. So I was kind of like, well, probably won't fund and record till today. But at 4 o'clock, I got an email from the title company saying we're recorded. And I was like, oh, okay. But the agent just didn't tell me the information that I asked for, but still, it all worked out. They got keys. So, but yeah, you want to make sure that you can deliver what you promised when it happens. So good questions. For sure.
Back and forth. It's not really monetary,
but it matters.
It's a whole lot less stressful.
And yours, because they're going to be upset. And honestly, they're going to take it out on who's in front of them. So.
Done, obviously, many more transactions than I have. So I was curious how you.
Yeah.
As far as like usually, plan next day.
Right. If I know the lender really well and I know the agent on the other side and we're communicating really well, then yeah, I feel comfortable, but I still warn them. There's always a chance. So good questions. Yeah. Home warranty. Do you want to ask, like I always ask the buyer, do you want to ask for a home warranty? Hey, if we're in I literally had a multiple offer situation with one of my sellers. The offers were identical, like could not have been more similar except for the home warranty. $700 is what made that $500,000 house back 20 years ago, which was a huge house. That's what made the offer go through, $700. So do we want to ask for that or not? Yeah. Yeah, it depends. During 2020 and 2021, almost no sellers were paying for them because they were so competitive and sellers were just like, nope, nope. And everyone was trying to do everything they could to make their buyer's offer the best. So anything we could take out, no, we'll cover it. And I've had a lot of agents say, I'll pay for the home warranty if it makes this deal go through. But yeah, makes a difference. But right now, I would say probably 90% of sellers are paying it. Yeah. Repair limits. So VA loans also have this thing on the FHA and VA loans. You have to do the FHA VA addendum. And on the addendum, it asks you're upfront negotiating how much the seller will pay if the FHA or VA appraiser finds items that they consider need to be repaired. Now, the FHA and VA have a very specific list of what these things are, so it's not going to be anything and everything that they find in the house. But the house has to be livable, has to have a working cooktop, range, stove. You have to be able to live there. I had some back in the day when we were doing tons and tons of foreclosures. They're just stripped of everything. There's nothing left in them. FHA, VA won't loan on it until there's a stove in there. So if there's any peeling paint inside or outside of the house, I had one that had a humongous deck, beautiful deck, but peeling paint all over it. My sellers had to fix that before they could get the loan type that they wanted. And then water heater leaks. Those are the big ones I see. If the water heater leaks, that's got to be repaired. Or sometimes handrails. If you have stairs that need a handrail, those are the big ones for FHA, VA. But I do tell people all the time, like I've literally had a FHA loan tied up over this 10-cent piece of plastic that goes over the plug because the appraiser had to go back out and make sure it was put on. They charged $150 to go back out and look at that 10-cent piece of plastic in a garage because that's an FHA requirement. So
Below the screen with the white showing through there or paint chipped off.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yep. Any peeling or exposed. Yeah. Anything like that. So good. I always tell my sellers, if we walk through a house, getting a house ready, fix this before we even get it on the market because it's going to be an issue for FHA or VA. One thing that's come up more recently that I had never seen before was roofs. With insurance companies and the way they are right now, everything's so volatile. I had a listing, 14-year-old house. The roof was 14 years old. The lender said they would not lend on it because they couldn't find an insurance company that would insure a 14-year-old roof. And I was like, is that a thing? I called my title company. So the buyers backed out on my listing. And I was like, they're making this up. Called my title company. She's like, no, that is happening right now. Insurance companies are cracking, like they don't want to insure anything that they think is possibly going to be an issue. 14 years old, that roof had at least 10 years left on it. It's not like it's on its last leg. So that's kind of what's shocking to me. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Mm-hmm. Insurance. Oh, yeah. Sure. Exactly. We want to make sure we head those things off before we have the issue come up and a buyer potentially back out, because a buyer at that point, they do their inspection and they say, oh, never mind, we don't want it. What do? You're stuck. And now you got to fix it anyway for the next buyer because it's going to come up again. But yeah, so the FHA VA addendum actually addresses some of that up front and says the seller will fix up to X number of dollars FHA required repairs. So in that case, like usually right now I'm writing like $500 in that blank if I have that situation, because most houses don't have big issues. If I see a house that's like everything is peeling paint, everything, then we might up that. But usually it's not a big deal. Special clauses, we talked a little bit about escalation clauses. I don't see those as much right now. I actually don't like escalation clauses on my listings. I would prefer you just give me your offer. Tell me what you're willing to pay for my listing. And a lot of my sellers, I don't know if it's me rubbing off on them or them rubbing off on me, but feel the same way. Like, here's this offer. This was one of my listings. We had multiple offers. All of them were coming in over asking, and the one that had the escalation clause came in at asking, but with an escalation. We're like, are they serious? Like other ones are saying they'll pay higher already up front. This one says they will if. So are they really a serious buyer that they're going to back out if we, get down the road? So addendums, all your addendums have to go with the offer and make sure they do. I heard one time of an agent who forgot to put seller paid closing costs addendum with the offer. So it was never accepted by the seller. And all along they thought that it had been. So that agent had to end up paying the seller's or buyer's closing costs. Yeah.
Other agents done putting commands like an offer.
Mhm.
And then okay, I got a question for you. Emma,
Okay.
'cause I've done a couple offers this week.
Oh, good.
But
Good job.
the addendum, right?
Uh-huh.
So like closing costs, pretty typical right now.
Yeah.
Sellers pay 1 to 8
Right. Yep.
And send them a separate attachment. So you've got your rep C and then your addendum one is separate attachments to the email to the other agent, or are you combining them within command into a single PDF so they all show up as one single?
I like it one PDF, but I don't usually send them through command. I usually just send them in an email.
Right.
Oh,
Try to
yeah.
send them in email,
Okay.
but-
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I usually just use DocuSign, but yeah, I just combine them into one PDF because it's so much easier. You can, you can do it in DocuSign. Like if you put them in as 3 separate PDFs, when they sign it, you can download it as one. So it makes it much simpler. Yeah, good deal. There's a lot. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot, and every deal is different. Like every single deal, like when that came up about the roof, I was like, I have been doing real estate for 28 years at that point, and I've never heard of this. They are making this up. And then I'm like, okay, never mind, because it's something new. So, all right, talk through the offer, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller. You want to make sure actually your buyer understands what they're getting, when they're getting it, when they're getting possession. Bless you. Price, you want to make sure that they know what they're offering. A lot of things we do DocuSign, but like explain it as much to our clients, especially first time buyers. I'm really careful to go through line by line with them and make sure they know what they're signing. Yeah.
Get on the phone with them,
Mhm.
Zoom,
Yeah.
the offer, talk through all the different
Yep.
sections. Hey, here are the 5 highlights, because let's be honest, there's 5 or 6 things that are
Right.
really critical.
Important,
And
but
the rest-
I go through all of it. Like I'll go through each section. Yeah, like each section. Okay, here's this. This is what we're offering here. We're saying this. We said, yes, it is contingent on due diligence. Yes, contingent on appraisal. I go through line by line just to make sure. Unless it's a very sophisticated seller or buyer who's been through this a lot of times, then I'll kind of hit the highlights. Just depends on the situation, but make sure they understand what they're getting. This is where like questions of like, oh, I thought we asked for the washer and dryer. We thought that was included, things like that. When I had this was, they said, well, we just thought the play set out in the backyard was included. Well, ask for it if you want it. Like they didn't ask for it in the offer. And I actually had the buyer, young buyer, it was my listing, the buyer's dad call me up and say, but it's in the pictures. And I was like, so are the couches and everything else are in the pictures. That doesn't mean they're included, just because it's there. Make sure you understand. If they want the play set, ask for the play set. What is essential in your area? Common or standard terms. Like right now, we're seeing a lot more like HOA properties. Seller is paying like the HOA transfer fee, which is often a chunk of money. Some HOAs, it's 0.5% of the purchase price. That's the maximum allowable by Utah law. So 0.5% of the purchase price, like for example, on $1 million house is $5,000. Right now, that's pretty typical for a seller to pay that. 2020, we're paying it all day long because they're like, I want this house. I will pay whatever it takes. Avoid those rookie mistakes. Like ask somebody to look over your offer, like that one where I said, they put $80,000 seller financing one. I know they didn't mean to put that. I know they meant to put it on the next line down that was down payment. Avoid that. Don't do that. Like have somebody else look it over before you send it out. Yeah.
I hope I'm not.
You're good. No, that's what we're here for. Yeah.
I was another brokerage. I just hit the mark, but I've been with KW for 3 months. So.
And we're awesome. Oh.
And command is different and DocuSign is a little bit different.
Right.
So I'm still working through some of these things.
Yeah.
How the heck do I make this more efficient? So I don't want to read
Yes.
this contract when we're just renewing our offer.
Right.
The seller didn't respond by the.
Yeah.
One, I don't remember who it was, one of the agents, maybe you said, after you write an offer, go backwards, forwards, start at the bottom and scroll up and double check all your text boxes, all your boxes.
I love that.
And like in DocuSign, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can, just before I send it to my clients, I can go in and
Check it.
dollar amounts, dates.
Yep.
But if I do it in DocuSign from the room,
In command.
like there's 2 different places you can.
Yeah.
One saves it, one doesn't.
Mm-hmm. make sure. I just like to do it. I like to, this may be, you may think you may think I'm a grandma age because I actually like to write it in not in the SkySlope or DocuSign. I like to write the offer in the MLS in the old school way, and then I save it as a PDF, and then I put it in DocuSign. Because it makes my brain just process it right. You know, like if I do it in DocuSign or SkySlope, I worry that I'm going to miss something. So I like to just see it. And sometimes I'll even just print out a hard copy so I can look at it on paper, make sure I didn't screw anything up, like that comma or period, $11,200 or $11.20. You know, big difference. So exactly. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So avoid those. But yeah, questions I encourage. So yeah, not at all. Not at all.
Done more than I have.
It's sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you start getting yeah perspective.
In different ways.
Yeah, for sure. You don't like if you haven't. Yeah, there is so much. It's awesome. Oh, right. Oh. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. I take paper copies all the time. No, I take paper. Yes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's easier with sellers to do it at their table than send it DocuSign. And usually, like I actually usually do listings pen, you know, because that's when I sit down with them and go, hey, let's make sure everything is right on this MLS input sheet. Like you guys didn't add solar since we talked last, did you? Or you know what I mean? Like I go through it with them, like probably spend more time on it than most agents do, but I don't care. It's just the way it works. So, oh, I lovely.
She made like she's like
Yeah.
she's actually she was like printed it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
One thing I have a little kind of related, but I have like I bought a little tool bag that stays in the trunk of my
Yep.
car.
Uh-huh.
Baby wipes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Cleans, and
Oh,
well, they shouldn't. I didn't want them to. I
right.
discourage them, and then the toilet broke.
Oh,
So I got this
no.
tool in there. I have
Oh.
tools.
Yeah.
He's like, by the way, did you know that bathroom fan doesn't work? I'm like, oh no.
Oh, man.
So we like fixed it.
Oh,
I have baby wipes. I have like painter's tape. I have in case.
zip ties. I have all sorts of things in my car. Smart. Yeah, there's nothing worse than being at someone's table and they're like, okay, we're ready to sign. And you're like, I don't have the papers. You know, I would much rather have them there and have them sign. I literally one time did not go with the papers. And I was like, oh, I'll send it to you later in DocuSign. And by the time I got a couple hours, they changed their mind and decided not to list. I was like, they probably would have done that anyway. But I was like, ooh, if I would have had the papers, maybe that would have cemented them into the decision, right?
My little tool bag.
Yeah.
So I have those, like a tape measure.
Tape. I always have a tape measure, flashlight, all those things. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's just, like I said, I'm fairly new. But
No. One thing I heard that I love this. I heard this actually at family reunion this year, and I'm starting to do this. Is they give their clients a tape measure at the home inspection, and it's branded with their like stuff on it. So I just ordered some from Etsy, super easy. But so at the home inspection, you give them the tape measure that has your branding on it, and say, hey, while we're here, let's measure the things you need to measure, like fridge space or washer and dryer space, because I cannot tell you the hundreds of times I've gotten calls from buyers. Hey, can we go back to measure for the fridge? Hey, can we go back to measure this? So it just head that off at the pass, save you a lot of time down the road. I loved that suggestion. I was like, I am doing that. That is a good one. Because yeah, then they have their own tape measure. They're going to put it in their drawer where they're going to use it all the time, but it's got my name and number on it. They're going to remember me. Okay, cool. Presenting the offer. Yes, double, triple check all your documents, follow the agent's instructions. It gets a little weird when we hopefully don't see this soon, but like foreclosure properties back in the day, a lot of the foreclosure agents have very specific ways in how they want those offers to be received. Some of them you have to upload them to this site, or you have to, if you don't do that, your offer's not even going to be considered. So just make sure you follow the instructions, label all your documents clearly, put them in a logical order. Like you don't want it to say addendum number 3 and then addendum number 1 and where's addendum number 2, like make sense of it. Email them a summary. So yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was just gonna say, you mentioned on the previous slide about looking for agent mistakes.
Yeah.
Always double check. A lot of times you go out and do 3 or 4 showings with your client that have said, hey, we want to offer on number 2. Okay, well, you got to then circle back, double check that listing, read the agent remarks. Because a lot of agents are like, we only review Monday through Friday.
Right. And then if your client is
Day, so when you're getting those dates, your acceptance deadline.
Absolutely.
On Sunday at 8 p.m.
and you're setting expectations with your buyer that, hey, don't freak out. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm curious about your email.
So my email summary with buyers is I'm looking to kind of almost in a way replace the love letter, but reinforce some of the important things. I want the listing agent to know how well qualified my buyer is to buy this house. I want them to know that we're a strong buyer, that we are committed to the process, if they are, sometimes they're like wishy-washy, but so I won't say that. I want them to know that my client loves the house. I personally, as a listing agent, I want to see that emotional tie from a buyer, because buyers who don't have an emotional tie to a house are more likely to back out in inspection. So we've wasted 2 weeks or whatever, and then they back out because some dumb thing, like I had one, it was like a $300 repair. The buyer backed out before we could even, they didn't even try to negotiate. They're like, no. I was like, dang, I told the other agent, I will fix that. It's $300. They're like, no, they've already moved on. But they mentally just moved on. Like, that's weird. But people are weird. People do the weirdest things. So, so that's my email summary. Like, just kind of, hey, here's my offer. Here's their pre-approval letter. I want you to know they're working with my preferred lender. I've worked with him for 20 years. When we say we can close by the 18th, we're closing by the 18th. We're not, in fact, this one I was telling you guys about, we said we wrote the offer on the 31st, we're closing on the 18th, and I knew he could do it. I wasn't worried at all. On Monday, the lender called me and said, we can close today if you want. I'm like, okay, but the buyers couldn't do it. So, so just know what you're presenting.
What your position is now, that's all negotiable.
Yeah.
It was before in the rep sheet, but
right.
all that out,
I do. No, I mean, I'll do a little breakdown, like bullet points, kind of like, yeah, here's the price, here's the this, here's when we want to close here, yeah, put a little bullet points. Yeah, right.
Because that can be a huge.
Can be huge.
Sellers need 5 weeks to get out.
Right. We don't even know when the movers can get here. Yeah. So yeah, good questions. So yeah, I just kind of try and give a little bit of why they made an offer on this house. Or this is actually the same house. Why we're offering what we're offering. Here's 5 comps that all just closed at this price that are in the exact same development, that are the exact same townhome. So here's why we're offering what we're offering. That goes a long way with showing you're a professional to the other agent. I'm not just sending you a blind offer. I know what's selling in this neighborhood and what prices they're going for. So we're not trying to be offensive. We're trying to be realistic and fair for everybody. And it doesn't appraise.
It doesn't appraise that.
Exactly.
And maybe that's a bonus for your clients, right?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes that's in your favor, but sometimes the houses that I think are not going to appraise do. And I'm like, what in the world? Why did that appraise? But yeah. No, if we're doing a good offer, what I consider pretty close to asking or whatever, unless there's some reason why, I showed one the other day and in the agent remarks, it said, we're firm on this price. Well, if I were going to make an offer on that one, I would never have offered what they asked because it wasn't worth it. But I would have still presented my comps. This is why we're offering what we're offering. I know you said you're firm on that price, but here's the facts. You know, this is what the market's doing. So yeah, good questions. Notify the listing agent that you sent them an offer. Oh my gosh. Like you'd think that would be like no brainer, but I can't tell you how many times I've opened my email and see an offer from an agent I've never even talked to. Never, I don't even remember them showing the house. And I'm like, what is this? And honestly, sometimes it goes to spam. Like I don't even know it's there. And I've had agents like call me 3 days later after they sent the offer. And I was like, I've never even seen it. You sent me an offer? What? Super easy to just send a text. I do. Yep.
Or some I've seen will ask for an email reply.
Both. I do both. I said, I just sent you an offer. And in the email, I asked you to make sure, you know, that you received it. So if you don't see it, yes, absolutely. So yeah, both. And usually they'll text me right back. Got it. You know, something like that. But that's good enough for me. Add all the documents to command. So this is one thing the division is kind of cracking down on. And as newer agents, it's better for you to figure this out now than me, like where I'm like, oh man, I've never done it this way. Anything your buyer signs or your seller signs has to go in command. Anything, whether the offer got accepted or not, whether you went under contract and then it canceled, it has to go in command so that Dean can see it. The division is cracking down on that really hard. I've never done it that way. Like I have to like retrain, even, so say you get multiple offers on a house, every one of those offers has to go into command, not just the one you accepted. So hire a TC as soon as you feel comfortable because a transaction coordinator will save you so much time. I love my transaction coordinator. Sometimes people ask me how to do things in command and I'm like, I don't know. Brittany does it. Because I mean, when we had 27 offers on the same listing and you have to upload all of those to command, that's Brittany's job. Like, I'm not doing that. Consult with the buyer, kind of let them know what expectations are. Gary Keller says one of the best, most important phrases in real estate is, here's what comes next. Your buyer and your seller both need that reassurance to know what's next in the process. So my buyers, as soon as we go under contract, they get an email from me. It's kind of a template, but I just change it, personalize it to them. Like, hey, we're under contract. Congratulations. Here's what's next. I need your earnest money. I need you to pick an inspector. I need da 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 da. And then after that, we'll do this and kind of just breaking it all out in writing so there's no confusion. So same with sellers, like, okay, we're under contract now. Next, we expect the home inspection and then the appraiser. 2 of my listings recently, they didn't even do appraisals on. So I kept waiting for an appraiser to call. And so finally I'm reaching out to the buyer's agent and they're like, oh yeah, the lender waived the appraisal. I'm like, awesome, but that's good to know. You know, I'm not worrying that I'm waiting for somebody. Okay, so cruise. Okay, questions, ahas. How are we doing on time? We're doing okay. We'll just keep questions as we go. So moving along. So let's say you are the listing agent and you are receiving an offer. So by state law, you have to, or probably federal law, you have to present all offers to your clients. And you have to do it in a very timely manner. So, excuse me, make sure the offer is complete. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten offers from agents and they've left things blank that shouldn't be left blank, but you know.
Present the offers. You just text with kind of the key points.
I email it.
Send it
Well,
to them, but also follow up with the text, say, hey, this is what we're offering, closing, earnest money.
I like to have a voice-to-voice conversation
Okay.
with my sellers because I want to hear their reaction. I want to hear like, and usually it's just a phone call. Usually I'll text them and say, hey, we got an offer. Do you have a minute to chat in the next couple hours? And usually they're like, yeah, let's do it. You know, we want to talk. Nope. I wait till we talk. I've let them know we have it. So that's kind of meeting that criteria. We talk it over on the phone and then I will send them a breakdown in email format so they can see, all right, they're asking for this, 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 and this. And there's no confusion. Like, oh, they asked for the washer dryer. oh, I didn't want to include the washer dryer, whatever that is. Okay, so make sure it's complete. If it's not, before I even present it to my seller, I'm calling the buyer's agent back and saying, hey, you left this blank. Did you mean to do that? Or what's, what did you mean to do here? Because I don't want to get into it and have it be a messy situation where there's confusion and everybody's upset. We want to try and head that off early. Obviously, you're going to let the buyer's agent know you got their offer, get it to the seller timely, create your summary, whether that's a spreadsheet or an email or whatever you do want to do. Call the buyer's agent. I also like to have voice-to-voice conversations. Again, I'm old, but I like to have voice-to-voice conversations with the buyer's agent because that can tell me a lot about the motivation of the buyer, the motivation of the agent. Sometimes the agent's the one pushing things along. And I do like to call the lender. It is allowed in Utah. Lenders will tell you, they're limited on what they can tell you, but you just want to know that, yeah, I got a pre-approval letter from you. Are they good to go? And like I had on that VA one, the lender told me, she's like, I've worked with these clients all over the country for the last 15 years on houses they've bought. I know these clients. So she reassured me as the listing agent, yeah, this is not a weird wonky deal where it's, something's going to go wrong. Yeah, then an outline document when you call the sellers. So you know what you're telling them, you're hitting the highlights and you're not missing anything. Yeah, it totally. Yeah, and I encourage it, especially in a multiple offer situation. If you've got multiple offers, you want to know and sometimes, so this one actually just closed yesterday, called the lender. We had multiple offers and I called the lender and I was like, so your client offered a little less than the other one, but I just wanted to see, if that's his absolute max. The lender, they can maybe say, I can't tell you that or whatever, but I just asked the question. And he said, well, the lender almost cost him the deal, honestly. He's like, well, he can go higher, but I don't know if he wants to. And I was like, well, does he not like the house? But the other offer was contingent and his was not. So we got it to work and it closed yesterday. But the lender kind of made me hesitate. Like, does he not even like this house? Like, are we just playing a game? See how low we can go. And a lot of buyers will do that. See how low we can go, and then we're just going to back out. Yeah. If I have the chance, like if they're like, we want to talk right now, then I'll talk to them first. And then I'll say, I'm going to call the lender as soon as we hang up and I'll let you know what they say. So it just depends on circumstance. Okay, so did not work. There we go. Yeah, you guys know how to do this probably better than I do. Put it in command, put everything in there. Okay, so we're back in this process again. So it can be a loop. You can have a buyer. Oh boy, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, they moved from here to Pennsylvania. This was like, oh, my son was a baby. He's 26 now. This is a long time ago. They moved back to Utah. Well, in Pennsylvania, they're used to acre lots. That's just common. And so when they were moving back here to Layton, they were like, we want a minimum of a quarter acre. Minimum, like, that we want a bigger lot. I showed them, first of all, they were willing to look within 4 counties and within this wide price range that was like anywhere from 250 to 600. Okay, that really narrows nothing down. In that time, 250 was a pretty decent house, but I literally showed them 100 houses. And they wrote offers on like 5 of them. They were just lowballing, like, well, if we could get it for this, then we would take it. And I was like, oh my gosh. The house they ended up buying, they still live in today. This again shows age. They found in the newspaper and they were like, how come we haven't seen this house yet? And I looked and on the MLS, it had been on the MLS for like 90 days. It was because it was 0.24 acres. And I had set my search criteria at 0.25. And so we missed it. So now anytime buyers tell me stuff like that, I fudge it back a little bit. But I won't, the one thing I won't do is what the TV shows do, and I hate this when they're like, yeah, my budget is 700,000, and then they go show them $1.2 million house. Like, I will not do that to you guys. So if you want to up your price range, you need to tell me, because I won't show you houses that are out of your price range. If you,
I buffer a little bit.
a little, yeah, because there
Yeah, so
might be
let's add
potential.
seven.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. If the house is, yeah. Yeah, and I'll,
And I tell.
Yeah, same.
this house is-
exactly. So we can see there might be something we,
Love it. 720.
Yep.
Like, they-
exactly.
put me up that extra
Yeah.
$125 a month.
Right. Absolutely. Same. But I've gotten a little more careful about how I do that. But I do let them know, like, hey, I'm gonna just buffer it a little bit just in case there's some negotiating room. There might not be. Like, I will tell you, this house is priced exactly right, or it is overpriced. Maybe we can negotiate. But yeah, this can be a loop. You could be doing this over and over and over again with the same buyer. You could be, for whatever reason, this winter was weird. I had lots of fickle buyers on my listings. I had buyers that they would write an offer, we would get just about to accept it, and they're like, ah, never mind. I'm like, what? What is happening? We didn't force you to write the offer. So even like listings, I had one listing, like we just kept getting offers and the buyers just kept backing out. And I was like, what is going on? It's just like something in the air. I don't know. But so yeah, you could have this with buyers, you could have it with sellers, just looping around until you finally get under contract and to closing. So this is when they both reach a decision, you get to a mutual, either they're moving on or they're not. And come on, there we go. Okay, let's, where are we? Talk a little bit about, we probably don't have enough time to go into too much, but like in terms of how you would respond to an offer. We talked about it a lot. So what do you guys think? What questions do you guys have about that? Like, say you're the listing agent and you just received an offer from a buyer's agent. What's the next step? Mm-hmm. So yeah, they usually have an acceptance timeline in the offer, but like there could be times when I'm like, yeah, I know my seller's not gonna be able to meet that because he's on a flight to Ireland right now. Like, I know he's not gonna make it. Like, you gave us till 5 o'clock tonight, it's not gonna happen. So yeah, communicating whatever needs to be communicated. Next, what's next after that? Listing agent. Mhm.
Anything else I'd have in that initial conversation that we like, but I remember, after that, maybe just speaking to the.
Yes, review it yourself. Yeah, review it yourself before you go to review it with the seller, so you're not surprised. This is a weird one, but like a long time ago, I was in a different office and a different agent had this house listed, and then somehow it came to me after her listing expired. And she told me that they had an offer with this previous agent, but she could tell that the agent was showing up to their house with the offer in hand and hadn't even looked at it. She's like, how unprofessional. Like, how unprofessional is that to like present this offer to us and she doesn't even know what it says. She's like, I saw her out in her car just like looking at it. Hey, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
As far as timelines go, right? The acceptance. So it's
Deadline,
response deadline.
right? We talked about that. Yep.
Just don't respond.
Right. And that's
Negotiation.
absolutely
Or counter, find yourself time for another offer to come in. I've done that
possibly.
before.
Yeah. And you can always withdraw the counter.
Yeah.
Mhm.
As far as it
Mhm.
have to communicate.
Has to be signed and communicated. It doesn't even have to be delivered technically, but signed and communicated. It does. And you can't tell someone it's signed if it's not signed. Like, oh, they're gonna sign it, doesn't matter. It has to be signed, and communicated with the other agent. So good questions. Okay, so then we're gonna cruise through here. Oh, that's a good question. Counter offers. Oh, the I once had an offer come through. I don't know why the agent didn't put it all in one offer, like in one addendum. He wrote 3 different addenda to the contract. One, it was his daughter buying the house. So one is this, and the next addendum says they want a closing cost, and the next, why did you just put it all in one? Come on. But, but we were going to counter the offer, but we're okay. We know, like, addendum number 1 says he's related to his daughter. We get that. Like, we're okay. Can we just accept that addendum number 1 and the counter number 2 and number 3? You can't. You got to be really careful. So the whole package. Yep. It's like, here's a box. That's the whole package. You're countering, even if you accept some of the terms, the only thing that changes is what you change on the counteroffer. So for example, like, okay, they offered this, but we don't want to pay that. You better make sure you put it in your counteroffer that you're not paying that or whatever. Sometimes. Sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. Back and forth. Yeah. All right.
Then just call the other agent, say, hey, this is what we're planning to counter. I just want to run it past you. And sometimes they'll say, hey, can we tweak this day?
Mm-hmm.
It's their birthday.
Right.
You know,
Because if it's something simple like that. or
Yeah.
I actually like this. That's something else.
Exactly. Better, less paper, less headache.
You're the listing agent, somebody brings you with 3 addendums,
Mhm.
2 of them, but 1 you want to tweak a little bit, we can counter.
You're countering the whole thing.
Do you have your agents accept? addendum
No.
1 and addendum 2,
No.
just reject
You're just, yeah, each addendum, you're going to technically, yeah. But yeah, so addendum number 1, we're still going to say counteroffer on addendum number 4 to
addendum 4, you're gonna pull
address.
all 3 of those things.
Oh yeah, or only the things we want to change. Yeah, so if we're okay with addendum number 1, we don't have to even address it, even though we're technically countering it.
You're gonna check counter, but you don't have to modify verbiage.
Correct. Yep. Perfect. Good questions. Okay. I think we're ready to recap. Okay, questions or like what did we go through too quickly that you're like, wait, I need to go? What surprised you? What's questions or you want to go deeper into? Yeah. Mhm.
I have a client with really 2 showings. At the last house we went and saw, he really loved. So that was kind of think about it.
Mhm.
And that's how I got under contract.
Mhm. Yeah.
That situation. The house they're looking for is like able to scoop over.
I usually, that's a great question. Sometimes they have to feel it themselves and lose a few. And that's hard on you because you're like, I'm doing all this work and not getting anywhere. But sometimes they have to like have that experience before they get there. Other times I would like tell them like, hey, this is a hot property and it is most likely going to go fast. If you want it, or if you even think you want it, like, so my first time buyers that came up they were a couple weeks ago, we saw 4 houses one night and that was it. They were like first time buyers and they're so nervous, but they're like, we really like this one. We can't go out. It was Thursday night. We went and saw 4 properties. They're like, we can't go out again until Saturday, but we really like this one. Like it feels like our house. And I was like, okay, guys, here's what we can do. We can write an offer. We still have our due diligence, so you can back out for any reason. Like we can go out Saturday morning and look at 10 more houses so you feel comfortable with your decision. And if you don't want it, you don't have to go forward. But at least it kind of gets your ball rolling and like in the game, because, and they literally did, like, we went and saw a bunch of houses Saturday morning. They're like, nope, that's the one we want. The seller had countered us in the meantime on Friday. And so they were able to just accept the seller's counter on Saturday. But it gave them like, okay, we're not going to lose this to someone else, but I still have an out, and you want to be careful with that. Like, you don't want to play that too much because then they could just waste a lot of your time. So again, it's kind of getting back to motivation and like, how can I make sure I'm looking for the right house for you? Like, is there something I'm missing? That's what my sister-in-law, I'm like, what am I missing here? It's the 0.24 acre lot. What am I missing? So sometimes it's just the little tweaks that's like, they don't feel it yet. They're not like, this is not our house, like, and sometimes it's that emotional, like I said, that the buyer has to feel like this feels like, where they have to feel that before they move forward. No. As a listing agent, I don't like that either, because I'm like, I've had so many buyers, like even on my listings say, I want it, I want to make an offer, I haven't been through it yet, and then they go through it and they're like, nah, never mind. You know, for whatever reason. It's a lot of work, yeah, to not have seen. And as a listing agent, so I'm just like, I don't even take those offers seriously. I want to know that they've walked through the house.
And if they can't walk through it for a few days, as an agent, you know, just
Yeah,
review of it,
right.
people walk through it.
Yeah. For them. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, you just want to be careful, because a lot of agents will say no blind offer. I don't say that on my listings, but I strongly discourage it. Like,
Keeping an eye on who's going through that property.
absolutely. And I had one back in 2020 that I had a client that was out of town for the weekend, and I knew this was the house he wanted. And I went through the open house, and there was this one, another one, lines out the door. And the listing agent remembered that I was like hoping she just wouldn't remember that my client wasn't with me. Like, I drew him a floor plan, like I did, you know, FaceTime or whatever. I knew this was the house he wanted, but she remembered that he wasn't with me. She called me back and she's like, well, he hasn't been through the house. So and he would have bought that house. Like, he totally would have, but they went with another offer because he hadn't been through the house. I was like,
I should have grabbed it.
I thought, yeah, true. My son, somebody come along with me. It's true. That would have been a good idea. I didn't think of that. I love that idea. Next time. So anyway, you guys are awesome. Good luck with everything. If you have any questions, I love it. The questions are helpful. No,
I don't even know what question.
exactly. If you don't know what you don't know. Huh.
Still new enough to know the frustration.
Yes.
Stuff that I feel like I figured out.
And it's constantly evolving, constantly changing. Cause like I said, things are never the same in real estate. The forms change, everything changes. So
As I'm over, but they change so often. I'm constantly-
last year they changed
They just
everything
updated it on
because of that. Yeah.
They updated it.
Yeah. Usually like the REPC will only change like every 10 years or so. Like, it's a big deal to update the REPC because it has to go through the Attorney General's office and like everything on that. But like the other forms can change more often. And because of the NAR lawsuit last year and like all the changes that we had to put in there, there were like unintended consequences we didn't know. Like, I actually sit on the forms committee at UAR. And so, yeah, so like there were things that we put in that were like, we don't know how this is going to play out until it actually starts getting used. And there were some unintended consequences that we were like, oh, we need to tweak that and change that really quickly because it's hurting people. Like, one that I heard was the buyer broker commission. The agent had put the like 3% and she put 0. And the seller said, well, I choose 0.
Yeah,
And she got paid nothing,
you do that.
right? She thought that was what it was, like, or 0. So yeah, we had to make some tweaks, right? And I'm